Dennis, I, like you, was trained as a scientist, and virtually for my whole life, I have had a great desire to wonder whether there is a God. And I have had the pleasure of speaking to many people on both sides who believe in God, who don't believe in God, very smart people, very thoughtful people, serious people. And I find myself pulled in all directions at different times. Isn't then agnosticism an honest recognition that I really don't know the best solution?
I think actually, if you look at just in science, let's put God on one side just for the moment, but just look in science, I don't think there are any real agnostics in science. You see, to do science, you have to be committed. Now, that doesn't mean to say you know the answer before you get there, but you have to be sufficiently committed to the scientific pathway to do experiments, to write grants, to put forward a hypothesis, which you then test. So I think that in that way, science is quite interesting because it tells us, and if I look around my lab here, for example, everyone's committed to a project, they are committed people.
Right.
And I actually think that in people's daily lives, they're also completely committed. So although they may call themselves agnostic, in actual fact, we all have to construct our daily biographies, we have to make ethical decisions and moral decisions, and these go way beyond science. In this case, they are meta-scientific questions, they're metaphysical questions. And I think people have to make those decisions based on metaphysics. And they're in a sort of committed, actually, without knowing it perhaps and without realizing it, to certain views about whether there is a God or not, whether there is some kind of ultimate reality in the universe. So I actually think, although intellectually, it sounds as if one can be an agnostic, I think in reality, pragmatically, because we all have to construct our own biographies, we actually are committed to certain philosophies, actually, which actually either pragmatically say there is a God or there isn't a God. We have to behave as if we know the answer, even if intellectually we say we don't.
Let me reflect personally, and you can diagnose me. I would say in my behavioral life, my moral life, my career, I try to do what's best for my family, myself, and other people. And I'm not necessarily thinking about that this is what God would have me do if there's a God. I mean, there's a certain moral instinct that we all sort of have, society gives us, and I don't think I'm motivated by God. Maybe I am worried subconsciously, but it's certainly not in the forefront. On the other hand, I don't use the term agnostic in the sense of, well, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I would use it in its strongest possible meaning, saying I am deeply concerned. I deeply want to investigate both sides and really understand what works, not because I want a behavioral mechanism for my life, but I'm really concerned because it's a burning question for me. Maybe I'm, a little obsessive about it, but it's a burning question.
Spoken, if I might say so, as a truly committed person, really committed to the agnostic path in that sense. But I think that's a much healthier form of agnosticism, certainly than one, like you said earlier, would be, oh well, it doesn't really matter, and I'll just get on with my life.
Right.
I think the attitude that you're expressing there is a much more scientific attitude, where you really want to find out something, and you go on a quest, and you listen to different points of view, and you try and add it all up. But I think want to go on also and make the point that, to me, the difficulty about, let's say, staying in an agnostic position the whole of one's life would be, you've only got one life. Now, if we could replay the tape of life again, we could have several runs at it and we could try out different views. But as far as we know, we don't have that luxury. Okay. So in a way, one has to think that life is not all that long, and we only have one go at it. So I think that kind of helps one to perhaps become committed maybe to one direction or another, perhaps earlier than if we thought we had reincarnation and we were kind of recycled through many different lives. And so I think that's one factor that impinges on the discussion.
Can't argue with that. Yeah. I can't argue with that, but on the other hand, if I really am committed to a desire to believe in God, I am equally scared and frightened to make the wrong choice, to fool myself into believing in something that really isn't true. Because it would almost be, to me, a form of blasphemy to force myself to believe in a God if I really didn't.
I think that attitude is exactly right. And I think that one should never, ever force oneself into a certain belief, either in science or in the more general decisions of life. And obviously, if we did that in science, we could end up with some real problems. Right. It happens in science, of course. Some people force themselves to keep believing a theory long after its sell-by date. And, the theory only dies out with the death of the scientist, actually, because they never did give up on it. So clearly we need to be open to the evidence, and we need to be open to what's out there. I have to say in my own case, I'm looking for a broader explanation of why something exists.
I am too.
And I'm sure you are as well. But, then obviously it comes down to this finely balanced argument of whether the God hypothesis gives us a better explanation for all that we see around us in the universe and in our daily lives and in our science, or whether it doesn't. And I think obviously that's the crux of the matter. And I know which way I've jumped, But I think at the end of the day, what tips the balance for me, and I can only speak personally here, everyone's different, but what sort of tipped the balance for me is that here we're living in this amazing world, with this remarkably complex organ between our ears, probably the most complex organ we know about in the universe. It's like we're living in a play. We sometimes feel we're living in a theatre. We're living out a drama. We have as you said, moral instincts. We have morality has come out of matter. I mean, it's such an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So in a way, to me, it comes down to the kind of inference to the best explanation. We're living in a drama. We're living in this play. We're living, with lives where we have to make these decisions, as well as the science. We have to live our personal lives day by day. So what is the kind of upper level narrative that makes best sense of that? Now, to me, theism, the idea of a personal God who has intentions and purposes in bringing this whole play into being, the great drama of life, that seems to me to make quite reasonable sense as an inference to the best explanation.